The reason I love Sketchnotes is because I need to process in a creative way. And I think a lot of our students have to do that too. We have often been told throughout education not to doodle while you're listening. But what if doodling is actually helping our students learn? Think about it. As you're hearing the information, your hand is moving, it's drawing, it's helping you comprehend what you're learning. This is how a lot of our learners learn. Sketchnotes can be a great tool for anything that students listen to. So it can be your lesson plan. It could also be a podcast. Maybe you find some inspirational podcasts and you ask your students to go home and listen to that podcast and draw what they think, or a TED Talk. You can use Sketchnotes in your classroom in many different ways. Here's an example of a Sketchnote that I have already completed. This is actually an AOE conference that I attended via the internet, which I just love, because you can sit back and really listen, sketch. You can replay it, you can pause it, which is really a benefit when you're doing Sketchnotes. So as you can see, this format is kind of random. Sometimes I can be a little bit more organized with the way that I lay this out. I have kind of each of our presenters highlighted and what they talked about. I just have a couple of keywords and then an image to remind me of the main topic that they were talking about. I had so many notes from that conference, I actually have it on 2 pages. But sometimes we're using these a little bit differently. So this was in a meeting, or you can consider it in your class. What we did was we had the Pride team was meeting. Here's the date, and these are all the different things that we talked about and discussed. This helps me organize my thoughts, and it also helps me be a doer when it comes to putting these things in action. Okay, so let's bring you through how you might do Sketchnotes with your student. We are going to be talking about the elements of art. That's something that we all can understand and we teach on a regular basis. If you're working with younger kids, you might want to give some guidelines to begin with. Maybe you divide up the paper so that they know where to sketch. But if you're working with older students, you might allow them to choose how they format their artwork. So the first thing that you're going to do is ask them someplace to write the title of your class, so art class. And of course they could make it as beautiful as they want. I always encourage my students to go back and add some design. So right now we just have art class. Find a place to write art class. Okay, now we're doing the elements of art, right? So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 of them. So you would make 7 spaces. You could either separate them out. So sometimes I do like kind of a bubble, some different shapes. Do another one over here, connecting them. So what do I have? 4, and now I just need this last one. And then sometimes your speaker or your presenter will actually give you the headlines, but maybe you add them as the presenter is continuing to talk. So you're the teacher and you're talking to your students, and you mentioned that line is one of the elements of art. So they write down line. They can write it within that space or on the outside like I did. And then they're actually going to create line. And maybe as you're presenting, you're drawing these lines for your students, or maybe they're working on their own, discovering their own lines. Maybe they're working as a team and they're designing all sorts of lines like that. Now, of course, the next one would be shape, right? And you'll continue like that until you have completed your entire notes. So students are going to be adding their shapes in, maybe by what you're presenting, or maybe just by listening to it or discovering them throughout the room. You get to choose how you have your students interact with their sketch notes. Free form shapes. Every once in a while, they might need to add little notes. So let's say that they knew what all these geometric shapes are, but they forgot, they're afraid they might forget this. So they can write free form. Combining words with pictures is an okay thing to do in your sketch notes. We would just continue this until we complete our sketch notes for the whole lesson, or the podcast, or the TED Talk, whatever you are using it for. And then maybe you have your students turn this in or share it with other people, or maybe it's just notes for themselves. All are correct when you're working with sketch notes.